What is going on, people? It is April 19th. It is the end of tax season. It is turkey season. It is spring. 5 minutes ago, we just dropped our 420 episode. It's just all good things right now. So hopefully you guys are tuning in because you're excited about turkeys, turkey hunting. Maybe it's your first season. Maybe you're thinking about your first season. Or you just are really fascinated by turkeys and want to know more about turkeys. Any of those is a good reason to be watching. So we're joined by Adam from Kelsier Hunts. He's used to be the Socialist Bowhunter. He has since rechanged his handle, but same information, same face, different handle.
Yeah. So hi guys. Good evening. I'm Adam. So I used to go by the Socialist Bowhunter, and now we're going with a new tag. First, I kind of wanted it to be a little easier for me to find my people on Instagram, I suppose. Anyway, we're going to talk about turkeys. So turkey season is already underway. People are already turkey hunting in a few states. In Michigan, where I'm from, we'll be starting on Saturday. So just 5 days from now. It's exciting time of the year. It's springtime. The birds are making a lot of noise. It's a lot of fun. So I guess first, just a quick little bit about myself. I am kind of a conservative to liberal to Bernie bro to Bread Book kind of. That's like kind of my history summed up really quick. I started hunting in 2020 when I had like extra free time, I guess, because of COVID. There was nothing else to do really, and I got invited out. So I started hunting deer at first and got immediately hooked. Like I probably hunted 50 times that first deer season. And then the very next thing I did was turkey. So turkey is a super unique animal to hunt, and they're modern day dinosaurs. They're really, really cool. And it's a pretty unique hunting experience. And I would say that it's remarkably accessible compared to like deer hunting or duck hunting or bird hunting. It's pretty accessible, and it's probably the most interactive type of hunting that I can think of, in that you're kind of stepping into the role of a turkey when you're doing the calling. So some interesting stuff about turkeys from a conservation point of view. Turkeys, they were basically hunted to extinction in the 1800s and early 1900s. So in some states like my own, there was no turkeys in 1900. They were completely hunted, extirpated from the entire state. And that was the case in a lot of the East Coast, like where you're from. There was no turkeys. I think I read today that it was like Vermont. It was like by 1840. So very, very early on, they were hunted to extinction by settlers. You got to think there was a couple million settlers. Today, there's like less than 10 million turkeys in the U.S. So a few million pioneers, right? Heading west, and not a lot of birds. So they were basically extirpated from every state. And have since been restored in almost every state. So right now you can hunt turkeys in all 49 states except Alaska. It's the only one you can't. So that's pretty cool. It's one of the rare successes of conservation, I guess you could say, in U.S. history.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because if anyone listening raises turkeys, for like native turkey birds, they're usually named by the location where they're from, but they all basically look the same. And I'm guessing that's because the genetics are probably from a very narrow pool. So there's not nearly as much diversity as you might see in like deer, where there's like very remarkable differences between deer in different locations.
Yep. Yeah, there's 6 recognized subspecies, and that kind of varies because I took a class through the Michigan Department of Natural Resources last year, and they only talked about 4. But I think pretty broadly people talk about 5, but there is really 6. So there's easterns, which are like where we are. So basically everything east of the Rocky Mountains. And those are the biggest. There's the most of them. They're the loudest. The easterns, that's probably what you think of. Like if you think of and then there's ocellateds, which only occupy a small area in Mexico. There's Rio Grandes and Merriam's, which are more like central western U.S. And then there is Osceolas, which are exclusive to Florida. And then there's Golds, which come up into like Arizona, and they're in Mexico as well. So those six species, they're all about the same, like you said, but there is some size variation. Like some of the males are like 30 pounds, some of them are like 20 pounds.
Yeah. We as somebody that raises birds, I'll occasionally do Narragansett turkeys, which are domesticated. They're basically as close to the eastern North American turkey as like genetically possible, and they breed together all the time. If wild turkeys come through your property, sometimes the turkeys you have will just go with them and just become part of the wild flock.
Interesting.
Like they're like genetically speaking, they're so close together that it is interesting to see like wild turkeys and be like, that looks like the one in my backyard. Like it's no different. It's like if you saw like wild chickens walking around and being like, oh yeah, I have one that looks like that.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Turkeys are obviously they're super popular. Like they're popular as a game bird because they're fun to hunt, they're interesting to hunt, but also obviously they're delicious, right? For the same reason that you raise them, they're delicious. They're great game birds. So
yeah, people don't like turkey because they don't know how to cook it. Is the problem.
Yes. So the first time I cooked wild turkey, I was really afraid of it being dry because that's what people do to store-bought turkey, and a wild turkey has a lot less fat, so very easy to dry out. But if you cook it carefully with meat thermometer, things like that, then it'll turn out really good. That's been my experience cooking it so far. So for sure, the eating is one of the best parts of hunting.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's really, really nice that we can now hunt these birds everywhere. When I was a kid, like we never saw them, never saw them around. But now, like you see them out and about, like in the roads. Like I live in the Detroit area, so like fairly suburban. But if you drive half hour, you can find birds like in some of the like larger parks and stuff like that. So it's really cool. So conservation success story, which is a kind of a rarity. One thing that's kind of interesting, I mentioned this last time I was on with you, is there's the North American model of wildlife conservation, which is allegedly how we're supposed to like treat our wildlife and like how our government is supposed to act. So it says wildlife is a public resource. Markets for game are eliminated, so you can't sell game. Allocation for wildlife by law. Wildlife can only be killed for a legitimate purpose. Wildlife species are considered international resources. Science is the proper tool for discharge of wildlife policy, and the ethic of the democracy of hunting. So like in practice, a lot of these things are kind of bullshit, like a lot of stuff that the United States government says. But this ethic is shared by a lot of hunters. So when we talk about building bridges to centrists or even more conservative folks, this is a potential bridge. So just, I guess, keep that in mind. And a lot of times what I find is that the nuance, I have large differences of opinion in the nuance of a lot of issues, but it's in the spirit of how I feel is often aligned with a lot of other conservative people because they care about conservation as well. So it's a weird way that we can intersect our views and bridge gaps if you're able to, and I'm able to. So I'm trying to do that when I can.
Exactly. Yeah, conservation's an interesting space, especially in like hunting, because there's more skin in the game, and I think our conservation model of like how tags are distributed and like assessed, like how viable, like how much can be harvested in a specific year, gives some really interesting insights into like a decentralized model of democracy
Yes.
that is informed by science, but not as though the science is like your vanguard or anything like that. Which I think is really interesting and makes it is a much more pragmatic model of like, hey, we have something we can show you that can work and works, and it may not be perfect, but like far left people and far right people can both agree this is like a lot better than many other places in the world.
Yeah, totally agree on that. And what you said about like local management is very, very true, and that includes all the good of that, right? That people that understand conservation or environmentalism can actually, their opinion can matter. But on the flip side of it, you get rich bastards using their money to try to restrict land access and things like that. So it can kind of cut both ways if we let it.
Yeah.
So it's important to step into those spaces if that's what you want to do and what you can do. Yes.
Before you get going, there's a bunch of people listening and no one said hi. So if you're watching and you're interested, this is your first year hunting, thinking about your first year hunting, drop a line, say hi. Definitely want to hear kind of where everyone stands. If there's a lot of repeat turkey hunters that are just excited for the season and want to hear more and bone up on their knowledge, please chime in. But go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody's chomping at the bit, but yeah, go ahead and fire away. So you mentioned a little bit about like how tags are distributed. It's pretty interesting. I've heard from some people, like in my state, that the distribution of tags is really interesting. It's the hunting season is supposed to take place right after the breeding is done, so you're not supposed to be shooting toms that have yet to breed hens. That's the idea of it. And in Michigan, the way our seasons are set up, it seems like that's pretty well done, as far as I can tell. But some people sent me some messages this week from Indiana, and there's one other state, I don't remember what it was, saying that their seasons basically had no staggering and things like that. So I think it, like you said, good local management. Michigan is well known for well-managed public lands and good hunting access. It's well known for that, but not everywhere is, unfortunately. So, but that can change if you get involved. So, so speaking of tags, I guess just for folks that are totally new, basically every state you have to go through some kind of hunter safety class for starters. Because of COVID, basically all of those are available online now. So back in the day, you'd have to find a place, and go to an in-person class. Nowadays, you can do almost all of it online. If you were so compelled to do it in person, then I would look for like a sportsman's or a conservation club, like Google those kinds of words and see what comes up. You're more likely to find more like centrist liberal type folks at those kinds of places, is my experience. If you want to do an in-person class, but if you don't want to deal with anybody at all, you can probably do it online. And then my tags I bought online. So this is like what a tag looks like in Michigan. So this one is just lists some info about me and then my zone and the dates. So just a piece of paper. If you get it in the store, they print it on like the plastic paper in my state. Some places are all digital, I think. So it really varies, but it's pretty easy to do, at least in Michigan. And I think that we're a bit behind technologically compared to some places. So relatively easy to do. If anybody is ever struggling with anything like that, definitely reach out.
Yeah, and I'll say, just to piggyback on what you're saying about the classes, a lot of states, wildlife also offer a bunch of classes kind of peripheral to hunting. So like in Massachusetts, they just recently announced, and you can sign up to get emails when new classes drop. They're offering 2 different classes on like basic navigation, which is like a huge skill to have and like costs a lot of money if you want to go do it someplace else. And it's absolutely free in Mass. So if you have, depending on every state, check out what they offer. Many times it's going to be free, if not always. And like there's some cool stuff out there, even if you're not like, I don't want to learn necessarily hunting. If you're into outdoors, you're going to find something that they offer.
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned that I actually took a turkey hunting class at the Michigan DNR, which was early last year before I hunted. And I'm going to regurgitate a bunch of that information here today because it was held by Michigan DNR with the National Wild Turkey Federation. One of the guys that ran the class is like a presenter, goes all over the country and teaches people about hunting and does bird releases and stuff like that, like a full-time job. Yeah, so there's great access to stuff like that. It varies by state, of course, but I looked recently before I did the thing we did back in February. I looked at every single state's DNR website to try to find where their regulations, just to make sure that I could find them and that they were easy to access, and they all were. And like 20 or 30 states, they almost had the exact same website even, which is pretty interesting, just to know. So let's see. What do I have next? Okay, let's talk a little bit about habitat. So one of the reasons, aside from overhunting, that turkeys were basically hunted to extinction, or nearly hunted to extinction, was habitat loss. So today, there's a lot of organizations, which are both NGOs and governmental organizations, that are working on habitat management. So in Michigan, they buy state land. So there's recreation areas, state forests, national forests, all these different types of land, and every state has their own flavor of that. So by buying up this land, a lot of times they're doing clear cuts. So they're doing timber harvests. And then obviously you talk a lot about clear cutting and different kinds of regenerative growth of forests. They do controlled burns. Controlled burns especially are popular for turkey habitat. So turkeys, what they really like is they like a lot of diversity. They like thick cover, but not too thick, open, but not too open. They like to always have a water source nearby, but not too wet. They really like a lot of variety. Now, what I have keyed off of, and what everybody I've ever talked to in Michigan always says, it seems like they're always by a water source. So something to keep in mind: look for a little creek, little ponds, maybe even a larger lake. The bird I shot last year was near a pretty large lake. That was the nearest water source. Other birds that we encountered were like near creeks and things like that. So something to keep in mind. And then they eat a lot of greens, and you'll find them in field edges and things like that. But the most interesting thing about turkeys is the calling. So I think everybody kind of knows like the stereotypical like turkey gobble sound. They do that a lot in the spring. So they're doing it right now. Well, probably not right now, but they're doing it these days. And it's loud as hell. Like,
yeah, I'm looking for my caller.
You'll hear it from a pretty far distance. Uh-oh. You still there, Andy?
Yeah, are you? I lost you for a little second.
Okay, where did you lose me?
You're talking about their calls.
Okay. All right. So most interesting thing about turkey hunting, or at least in my opinion, is their calls. So the male turkeys gobble in the springtime very, very loudly, like the stereotypical gobble noise. They do it really loud. You can hear it from hundreds of yards away. And that is what we use to hunt them. So there's a few ways to do this. So when you kind of like walk into a field in the morning, let me see. Maybe let's talk about their day cycle first, and then we'll talk about how to call. So they every night, so they'll go up to a roost, except for when they're nesting. So they'll start off in trees. They start gobbling early in the morning, like very early before the sun is up. So like it's still dark. So if you're out there very, very, very early, please make the turkey sound. I can't. If you're out very, very, very early, you'll hear the songbirds first. That'd be the very first thing you'll hear. So silence, songbirds, then the turkeys will start. That's what I've experienced anyway. Yeah, okay. Maybe we'll make the turkey sound a little bit later. I got some calls. So they start gobbling when they're still on the roost. It's very, very loud. Like you'll hear it. Very opening day last year, we crossed a turkey field in the morning, and as we were putting on our gear, probably 400 yards, we heard turkeys gobbling across an open field. It was amazing. Like just thinking about it still kind of like puts me in awe. Like, it's so cool. So they start doing that, just kind of figuring out where each other are. The hen turkeys will start making their yelping noise, which is a noise that we as hunters will most frequently imitate. And then eventually they'll fly down. So they're big birds. They're really big, right? 30 pounds. So when they fly down, you can also hear the flapping of wings, hear them hit the ground, things like that. So ideally, you're going in somewhere that you already knew turkeys were in the general area. You're putting on your gear in the truck, or at the truck, whatever car, walking into the fields. And as you're getting set up, the turkeys are going to start gobbling, and they're going to fly down somewhere in your general area. And then you're going to try to call them into you. Okay, so they fly down. They're active all day. Right now, they're trying to pair up and breed. They're in their breeding season right now. So the typical way this goes is the hens make a whole bunch of yelping or clucking or purring noises. The toms gobble back, and then the hens go to the toms, and they kind of communicate back and forth, Marco Polo style in the woods. So that's kind of the way nature works. However, we're trying to we don't want to do that because you can't walk up a turkey. So they're extremely skilled at a few things. Logical reasoning, like a mammal, is not one of them. They're birds, so people think bird brain, things like that. They're not very intelligent. I would say that sometimes you'll feel like they've outsmarted you, but they're not very intelligent. So they use extremely good hearing and extremely good eyesight, and those are their primary. I don't know what I want to term them. Tools are their eyesight and their hearing. So they're going to use those against you. So you're not going to walk up a turkey. You're not going to walk up to them and be able to get within range and shoot them. So instead, what we do is we use our calls and we set up and we call them to us. So, okay, let's talk about some different kinds of calls. So my favorite kinds of calls are these ones. So it's a musical instrument, basically. It's a piece of like athletic tape. There's a little piece of metal in here in the middle. And then there's these latex bits. And these form a type of reed. So here's one. I have, I think, 3 here. And the way the latex is a little different. I think you can probably see the shape of that one is more triangular, whereas this one's more rectangular. So they make slightly different sounds. So these go right up in your mouth, and you can make the turkey sound, which somebody requested. I wasn't going to do this because it's going to sound really, really shitty. And also, I didn't practice today, so I might make a fool of myself. But so it's
pretty good.
So I like those calls a lot. You can control the volume. You can control how raspy it is, how fast, how slow, things like that. They take a little bit of getting used to. They tickle the shit out of your tongue. Like it's really, really uncomfortable at first. But once you get the hang of them, they're really fun to play around with. And they're obviously really small. So this is nothing to carry into the woods, right? It's this little thing. And they're really cheap. They're like $5. You could probably go to Walmart and find one for like maybe $7 or $8. But if you find a place like online, like a guy making them by hand, which is where I found these, then they're like $5-6 a piece. So these are really cool, really cheap, fun to play around with. And if you were to take one of these and go to like a public park that you knew had turkeys or whatever, and you started trying to make a Yelp call, even if you did a pretty shitty job, you would likely get calls back. Like I did last year when I was turkey hunting. Like I'm no expert. I got calls back. So you could too for like 100%. So even if you have no interest in hunting, maybe go somewhere where hunting is not allowed, but turkeys are, and play around with these. It can be really fun, especially in the spring. Then the other kind, this is a friction call. So this one's glass, has like glass that's like roughed up locally, which I have no way I'm gonna be able to show you that. And then a wooden striker. You kind of rub these things together, which I'm really bad at this. I'm not even gonna take this into the woods with me next weekend. Okay. So yeah, they make these that are like, they all have a little bit different sounds and stuff like that. I think a lot of people consider that these ones easier to use than the mouth calls, but they're more expensive. So I bought mouth calls first and learned how to use those first. But I got one of these for this year. My partner who I'm going to be hunting with, my life partner and hunting partner, has one as well, and a couple different strikers, which these are the strikers. Produce some different sounds as well. I think she has like 4 or 5 in her vest. Yeah, so the calling is really interesting. So you do a little bit of yelping, and then you wait and listen. And a lot of times you'll get a call back like right away. Like I was sometimes calling last year, and before I finished my calling, there was gobbling in the distance. And your hope is that you have lured this Tom in. Basically, you're playing a romantic game with him to make him think that you're interested in him and that he should come to you to attempt to breed a hen. So that's the goal. And like I said, that's kind of the opposite of the way they do things in nature. Normally, the hens go to the toms, so you really have to be convincing. But like I also said, I'm no master caller, and a lot of people are not master callers or anything like that. So if you can make a close enough imitation, then I think it's good enough. And sometimes you'll hear turkeys in the woods that it seems like they sound like crap. So, they're not too picky. So turkey calls are great. And that's, in my opinion, that's what makes it the most fun. Because you're getting, even if you're not seeing turkeys, you're at least hearing them, or you're at least there's nothing there, or you're interacting with them. Like the bird that I harvested last year, we called back and forth for 2 hours before I ended up taking that bird. It was it was a hell of an experience.
Yeah, you guys had a full conversation.
Yeah, I mean, really, we did. We went back and forth for it. I think it might have been more than 2 hours. It was a long time. It was the whole morning. Just absolutely amazing experience. And even if I hadn't taken a bird, just that alone would have been worth it. I could have walked out of the woods and said, "Wow, like that was amazing. That was worth it." Of course, the goal is to harvest, but I would have been happy either way. One of the other great things about turkey hunting is that you're out there in the springtime. So you're out there every day. Like the forest changes from day to day to day. Like the plants are taller. There's new stuff sprouting. Things smell a little different. There's new birds. So that's all. It's really rewarding, even if you don't harvest. Okay, so some other stuff. I got some other toys then. Okay, so other ways you can get turkeys to gobble. So you don't always want to use like hen calls all the time, because you don't always want to imply that you are a hen in a certain location. So there's other calls people use. They're called locator calls. So this one is a crow call. Looks a lot like a duck call actually, but it makes a crow sound. If you like blow into it, it's loud as shit. So I'm afraid to blow it any louder, but it makes a crow noise. So that's really good for like during the day. I was just up north in northern lower peninsula of Michigan, I don't know, 2 weeks ago now. And I was out running my dog, and I heard turkeys gobbling in the distance, which of course was amazing because that made me decide where I was going to hunt this year. And I was listening to them, like, why are they gobbling so much? Like I don't hear a hen or anything like that. And then I heard it. It was a crow flying overhead, crowing, making a whole bunch of noise, and they were gobbling back at his crowing. So it's called shock gobbling. They get startled by stuff, slam the truck door, yell at them in a park. They'll gobble back sometimes when they get startled. So crow call is great for that during the day. Before the sun is up, this is an owl call, which I actually don't remember how to blow the owl call, so I'm not going to try. Makes it just like an owl hoot. Oh, that's all. So all that stuff works pretty good for trying to locate them if you don't want to imply that you are a hen. So a lot of times we walk up to a place, blow the crow call real loud, give it a listen. If you hear a bird, then start looking at maps, looking at the lay of the land, and decide what we're going to do to set up. So once you found a bird, either just by listening or by going to the woods and calling, or by using locator calls, once you found a bird, basically your best option is to set up in a way that you're well concealed and call them into you. So a lot of times, I guess let's talk about concealment first. Like I said, they have incredible vision. Like if you were to like Google how good is a turkey's vision or shit like that, then some people would say like, oh, it's 3 times as good. I think they even see slightly into the IR and X-ray spectrum a little bit. They have telescoping vision. So people say it's like, oh, their vision is 3 times as good as people. So I don't really know how to quantify that when they're so unintelligent, I guess, compared to us, or in from a mammalian point of view, I guess they're unintelligent. But yeah, they have amazing eyesight. So you're not gonna be standing out in the open and fooling them. They're gonna evade you. And they usually, times that I have kind of walked up on birds in the woods, they're like 50, 60 yards. They're running off. You don't even see them. You just maybe see some like flashes of heads. So they'll see you from pretty far away. So we're using full camo, unlike other seasons where you're using hunter orange for safety. There is no hunter orange requirement. Here's a vest. It's all neutral colored. This is holding shotgun shells, water bottles, calls, things like that. It'll carry a turkey in it if a turkey's harvested. We're also using full face masks. So this is covering me from the eyeballs down. And then I'm wearing a hat on my head or something like that. This is a green hat, I think. So I might even be wearing this one. Yeah, you have to be really well concealed. Some people, they paint their face. In my case, I didn't do that. I just went with a mask. I think I have like a green buff, and then trying to set yourself up in places that are relatively concealed with the land around you. So using like little hills, using down trees, using taller grasses or like ferns. If you're hunting laden with the ferns are already up, you got to do something to hide from these birds until they're in a spot where you can shoot them. Which is it's not as hard as it sounds, really, to pick a spot. I think sometimes we get really indecisive trying to pick the perfect spot to sit down, and I don't know. I don't think it's so bad to do, but yeah. So you're gonna try to find a good spot and concealment setup, and you're gonna be doing your call sequences. And a lot of times people say, like, if you call, you get some calls back. You know, and a call back and forth 2 or 3 times, and then you might have to wait like up to half an hour before the bird actually walks all the way into you. So patience is key, but too much patience is not necessary. It's not like deer hunting where we're saying, I'm going to go sit for 4 hours. Turkey hunting is not like that. If we're in a place, my partner and I'd say 45 minutes. If it's quiet, we're moving. We're moving at least a couple 100 yards. If not, getting in the truck and moving to a different location in the public land spot that we're in. So it's definitely a different style of hunting. It's a kind of go find them and then pull them the last little ways into you. It's really the style. So.
Yeah, and I think I don't know what the laws are in Michigan around what you have to use when you're hunting deer, but because you're using shotgun and the type of
Yes.
ammo you're using, the spaces that you can hunt are much different. Just because you don't have to worry about like disbursement being significantly further.
Yes. So in Michigan, we have like the rifle line, so you can't even like hunt with rifles in like the lower half of the lower peninsula because there's too many people. But like the ballistics of shotguns are much different, right? So okay, so just for example, what's the muzzle velocity on these? Okay, 1,200 feet per second. These are turkey shells. You also mentioned non-toxic, and I guess I'll go to that in just a second. But ballistics first, 1,200 feet per second. That's pretty low. And then at 30 yards, that's dropped like 40% at 30 yards. So yeah, you like you said, you have the ability to do a lot of shooting scenarios that you cannot do with a rifle or even with a bow because this stuff is just not going to go very far. And also, each individual pellet weighs so little. It doesn't have the mass to go through 2 or 3 leaves even. Yeah, so that allows you to shoot stuff when it's on a hilltop when normally you would never be able to do that with a rifle. So in terms of shot, I don't think there's any state where you are completely restricted to use non-toxic shot yet. If you hunt in places where there's water, you have to use non-toxic shot. So that's been the case like for duck hunting for many, many years. However, a lot of people are using non-toxic shot now for all hunting, and I would strongly recommend that to everybody. Primary reason is if you wound an animal and it gets away and you don't recover it and it later dies, scavengers are going to ingest lead. And those scavengers include birds of prey like eagles and hawks and things like that. So that's the primary reason to not use leaded ammunition. So for turkeys, main stuff people use is this stuff right here, tungsten super shot. It's really, really fucking expensive. So this is 5 shells. It was $43 last year. I think it's more expensive this year. I bought 2 boxes of it. It'll last me, if we do things right, it'll last me 5 years. If right, I take a bird every year. Other than that, there's another company from Michigan, Boss. Oh my God, I'm so bad at using this camera. Boss. So these are copper-plated bismuth tin alloy. So they are like a dense metal, but they're copper-plated to prevent denting, like a lot of the alloys get. So allegedly, it's supposed to be better for ballistics. A lot of people use those for ducks. I use them for grouse now, but you can use them for turkeys as well. So Boss is another non-toxic brand. But I think probably TSS is the most popular. Only thing about TSS is that tungsten's really hard. So you have to usually you have to get a special choke for your shotgun for it. Special chokes, the TSS chokes. Yeah, so would strongly recommend go non-toxic if you can. Okay, let's see what else we got here.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's also different about turkey hunting, especially if you've never used a shotgun before, is the process of like aiming and like what you're aiming for, as opposed to like a deer or any other game that you're using a rifle for. What you're aiming for, what a clean shot looks like, and those types of things.
Yeah, so like you said, it is a lot different. With like any mammal, you'd be shooting at vital organs, basically, so lungs and heart. With flying birds like grouse, woodcocks, duck, stuff like that, you're shooting whatever you can hit, basically, with an open pattern of bird shot. In the case of turkeys, though, you shoot them directly at their head, basically. I think the common consensus is like 2 or 3 inches below their skull is where you should actually aim. So when you do that, the pattern of bird shot, because you're shooting a bunch of little pellets, right? I don't even know how many pellets is in here. A lot of pellets. So you want that entire pattern of pellets to only strike their central nervous system, basically. To keep all of it out of the meat would be ideal. So head and neck. And it doesn't take very many. It only takes like 2 or 3 pellets in that area to hit that central nervous system to have a very humane, very quick kill. If you do like I did and you put part of your pattern into the meat, then you're going to have to deal with that in butchering. And you might even lose some meat. So I lost part of a leg because my pattern hit part of a leg. And that was my mistake in the field, and it cost. So yeah, very important. But yeah, like you said, it's normally when you're shooting a shotgun, we're quickly reacting to a moving target. And as we mount the gun, we are moving to the target and shooting the bird. But in this case, you're sat on your ass for half an hour, pointing the gun where you think the bird is going to be, and you're aiming down the sights and stuff like that. So it's a much different experience with the shotgun. But I'd say it's a little easier. A lot of people, they pattern their guns, so they take a target. You can actually buy turkey targets that have like a turkey, like the size of their face and head and neck on it. You use that target and shoot it from various distances with the shells and the gun and the choke that you want to use, and make sure that your pattern is the right density and see how your gun behaves and things like that. It's a very good idea to do so. So that's actually on my schedule for one weeknight this week, whatever day the weather's best.
And you've talked about a choke. Could you explain what a choke is for folks
who
are familiar?
So a shotgun shoots. What's the fast way to explain this? So a shotgun shoots pellets, a whole bunch of pellets down the barrel. The barrel is smooth. On rifles, there is something called rifles and handguns. There's something called rifling. So some spiral cuts in the inside of the barrel. This is to put spin on the bullet. But in this case, we're not shooting bullets. We're shooting pellets, a whole bunch of pellets at once. So it's a smooth bore. So the inside of the barrel is smooth. And at the very end, it constricts. So smooth barrel. At the end, it constricts. And that constriction is performed on some guns. It's performed by the barrel itself. So the end of the barrel will have a choke. Or in the case of my guns, it has removable chokes. So it literally screws right into the end of the barrel and unscrews. And it controls how tight the pattern is. So when I'm hunting flying birds, I'm using a open choke. So things are very slightly tipped in. But when I'm hunting turkeys, I'm using a very, very tight choke. I'm exaggerating pretty severely, but if you were to hold them side by side, you could very, very clearly tell the difference between a bird shot choke or a turkey choke. And that's really so you can shoot further, more accurately, and for the pattern density. That's the main reason. So
Yeah, so so it's not just the distance, but also how wide of a scope you're hitting.
exactly, yeah,
Which, if you're trying to not hit just everything, like a turkey, you might want a narrower choke.
exactly. Yep. So most shotguns have they come with 5 or 3 chokes, and mine came with 5. So it's cylinder, improved cylinder, modified, improved, modified, and full. And then turkey is tighter yet than full, so that would be a 6. I think there's some other ones that are tighter as well, but yeah. So it's a tight pattern. It's not people always say you don't aim a shotgun, you point a shotgun, right? But in this case, you aim a shotgun. And in some cases, guys will even take their some guns and they'll put red dot sights on them during turkey season. Like the more common shotguns, like a Remington 870 or a Mossberg 500, those guns have accessories like that, and you could take a red dot and put it on there for turkey season, and people do it.
Yeah,
a lot of people do it.
Yeah, and
I don't,
for
but
Remington, a lot of times you have to change the barrel out for
yeah.
because you can't put a choke on it.
Yes. One of the guns that we had before was like you just said, it was improved cylinder choke, and it's just the way it was. There was no removable chokes. So also something to consider when you're getting a gun is you might want to get a gun if you're trying to get buy one that does all, which is kind of what I was doing, even though I got a break action. I want an all-purpose gun, so I have removable chokes and things. Yeah, another thing to consider. It's another expense, but all things considered, turkey hunting is not the most expensive of disciplines to get into. I guess maybe last thing to talk about is butchering and field dressing. So I know you know a lot more about this than me, but I'll say my experience with field dressing was my knives weren't sharp enough. And my knives weren't sharp enough. So I don't know what it was about those turkeys. It was so slimy. What it was the fat or what? I don't know what it was. Got through it, was no big deal, but yeah, my knives weren't sharp enough.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they when you're breaking down a bird, you tend, especially if you got that adrenaline going, you're shaking a little bit because you just killed the thing, and it's really easy to dull your knives on the bones really quickly. I always, whenever I butcher, I have just a little hunting knife, and I just switch out the blade every single time, so it's a brand new fresh blade.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that this year.
Yeah, it's worth it. The blades are a couple bucks a piece. Or if that, it's definitely worth it if you don't feel confident enough sharpening it, especially if you're killing a bird like a chicken or a turkey, that you're butchering because you raised it. At least for you, it's all right, it's already dead. If it takes a little bit longer, it's not you're not putting it through torture.
Yeah, exactly. But hopefully, you shoot well. By the time you walk up to it, it's already dead cleanly. That's the hope, right? Yeah. So field dressing, I guess, it's not the most fun thing in the world, but you just kind of dive in and do it. And also, it's kind of gross, but birds have crops, which is kind of where they hold their food before it goes to their stomach. So if you, especially in places where you're not limited to one bird and you can continue hunting, or if you have a partner that still has a tag, check and see what they have in their crop. So cut it open, look and see. So the bird I shot last year, I have a picture of it. It was full of leaves, absolutely full of leaves, which really surprised me. You wouldn't think, oh, turkeys eat leaves, but yeah, they do. And you can do that on all kinds of birds, not just turkeys. If you were hunting grouse or woodcock, you could do the same thing. You could and should do the same thing. And then what I did on my bird, I guess I'll just share my anecdotal experience. I hung it up in my garage, hung it up by the neck. I plucked it by hand. I think I even listened to it. I think you talked about how to pluck birds once or something. I don't know, maybe.
Did I? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I might have.
I had yeah. So I decided that I wanted to cook some breasts with skin on and some legs with skin on. So I plucked the entire bird in my garage by hand. It was the first time I'd ever done it or dealt with any bird. I'd never even done chicken or anything. So I mean, it was a pain, I guess, but it was totally accessible. Like if you were like, oh, I want to do that for the first time, you can do it. 100%, you can do it. And then breaking down the bird, basically just I did 2 breasts, two legs. I think probably the same way everybody does it. There's tons of videos on YouTube about how to do it. And, yeah, it's super rewarding. The butchering and the field dressing seems like it's like just all dirty work. But it's part of the cycle of connecting with your food, so don't miss out on it.
Yeah.
And then and if you get out there, enjoy your meal.
Yeah, and I'll just
I can't hear Andy either.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
I lost you immediately when you started talking.
Cool. So I'm back. Welcome. Thanks everyone for being concerned about me. So yeah, one of the things I'm assuming when you had the turkey, you gutted it in the field and then brought it home.
I actually did. I did it at my truck actually. But yeah. So I shot it, and I actually was like, I shot it and I was like, I did not watch enough videos about how to field dress this thing. So I had to walk back to my car and like get cell service actually and figure it out. So I wasn't as prepared as I should have been for doing the field dressing. I was surprised. I thought I was going to hunt the entire season and not see a bird. So yeah, sometimes it works out. Sometimes you study up and it does pay off. But yeah, I did it just at the car, and then I brought the bird home, plucked it, and butchered it that same day.
Yeah. So I think there's a big fear, and like some of it's justified, about folks when it comes to butchering animals, that it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I got to do it right away. Like if I don't like it, I'm going to get sick if I eat it or whatever. But like, especially this time of year, as long as it's cool out, you really do have like some time to work with that animal. Obviously, if you're
Yeah.
good and you know what you're doing, like it's going to make the meat taste better, but it shouldn't be like a fear of like, oh no, I can't hunt because I would never be able to break down this bird or butcher this bird or gut this bird in like 10 minutes. And you probably
Yeah.
can. You don't know that you can't, or that you can rather, but like it's not. I think there's like a very much a very serious fear about that whole process and like being on a clock.
Yeah. So yeah, I think people worry about that maybe even a lot too much. So this year, this fall, I shot a deer at 5:50 p.m. and I did not recover it and field dress it until like 10:30. Is almost 5 hours later, and I didn't start butchering it until the next day. It was 24 hours later before we started butchering it. So to mitigate like spoilage, like hang it. Like in the case of like a deer, you can buy, I forget what they call the gimbal or something like that, gambrel. And they're like $15 or $10. You could buy them, and you can like it's like a pulley system. You can hang a deer, like a 600-pound deer in theory, right in your garage. That's what I use for the turkey. And that just helps them be surrounded by air, helps them more evenly cool, and also there's not as much bacteria and bugs crawling all over them, stuff like that. So yeah, I think if you're afraid of like the field dressing and the butchering part of it, I don't love field dressing deer. I don't think anybody loves field dressing animals. But if you just jump right in, eventually you're immediately, your hands are covered in blood and you just have to get it over with, basically. That's what I did both times. I don't really want to do this, so I'm just going to make the cut that I know I need to make, and then pretty soon I'm a mess, and we just got to keep going until we're done.
Yep.
I mean, nobody likes doing it, but kind of
Yeah.
nothing to do but to do it. You can be prepared though by studying up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next thing you start thinking about, well, what if I learn to dry cure it? And like you can
Yeah.
go down a whole rabbit hole of like, how do I make this thing that I killed? Like, not only do I want to maximize like getting the most out of it, but also if it's going to sacrifice its life for me, having it produce the best quality food that's physically possible.
Yes. Yeah, so that's leveling up your cooking skills because any game you cook has less fat, so it's harder to cook. It's easier to dry out. But you also can learn how to make broth. Like that's on our to-do list. We got bones in the freezer that we saved because we're going to make broth from the venison. We got turkey bones left over from last year. We're going to add to. Yeah, you really start when you do something like this. When you go so far out of your way to kill something, it's not something to be done lightly. So you really want to find all the ways you can to, yeah, like you said, to use those animals, and not just the turkeys. Like I shot some upland birds this year, and now their feathers are being used to scent tennis balls that I'm using to train my dog. Like those animals are still with me and still being honored through use. Um, yeah, so I think it's a really nice perspective to have if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrapped up?
No, I think that's just about it. I guess if you're looking to hunt or get started, always feel like you can reach out to me on Instagram. There's other organizations out there like Backcountry Hunters, which is kind of more like centrist liberal, but you might be able to find nice people there. There's Hunters of Color, which is what it sounds like. There's other orgs out there, but yeah, I hope that if you're thinking about starting to hunt, that you would seriously consider Turkey as a place to start. It's super interactive. You get to be outside in the springtime. I'd highly recommend it. Yeah, and to everybody that's already planning on getting out, good luck to you. My partner will be out there this weekend, and then my season opens May 7th. So I guess good luck to us all. And it's okay if the birds win, right?
Yeah. Adam, thanks so much. This has been great. I'm going to do a
Thank
quick
you.
plug on the Poor Pro's Almanac, and then we can chat. All right. So, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys learned something about turkeys and hunting and made it a little bit more accessible. For folks that are not familiar with the Poor Pro's Almanac, we are a podcast that also occasionally does stuff like this. So if you enjoy it, please go check out the podcast. Also, you may notice this very fancy hat. We have a bunch for sale. Green is pretty much sold. I think there's one green left, but we've got gray and khaki. If you want one, shoot us a message on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Of course, follow us over there if you don't already. And of course, reach out to Adam if you want to learn more about hunting. He's super accessible and always happy to come on and talk about it. We will probably be doing more hunting stuff on the podcast in the future, but for now, also someone also loves their hat, and also go check out our Discord. So there's a lot of folks. I'm going to throw the link up right now. We also have fire beaver patches. So if you are obsessed with the idea of burning landscapes, you should get yourself a nice sweet fire beaver patch. My camera's backwards, so it doesn't look right. So you can get one of those too. Shoot us a message. They're pretty cool. We dropped a new episode, actually while we were doing this, on the history of cannabis. So for 420, you have a great episode to listen to tomorrow, or maybe tonight if you just can't wait. Hopefully you do listen today or maybe later on, because we'll be back tomorrow night, the whole gang, to do a live episode where we'll be basically covering half the stuff from the episode we're releasing or released, I guess. But also we're going to be talking about our own experiences with some really cool history of cannabis, like the DARE program. And I think it'll be a really lot of fun. So if you're around tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 25 hours from now, please tune in. Glad to hear people like their hats. I like them too. So that's why we got them, is because they're nice and fun. And we figured a few folks might want to keep their head warm. So I think that's everything. So hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Go check out the new episode. If you haven't listened, jump on wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, whatever. Go tune in. And if you want to support us, jump on Patreon. That's what helps us pay the bills to keep things going. It gives you early access to content, gives you early access to stuff that we sell. So patrons got first dibs on the hats, which is why we're basically at a green, even though we just got them. So yeah, it's a cool time. So thank you guys so much. This was a lot of fun, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Bye.